Hi guys, I'm out here in my backyard and I tune in a little bit to kind of update where you're at and to go through a little tutorial. If you notice the music in the background, that's my neighbor in her pool enjoying the time. It's real hot and humid out there, but hey, we're enjoying ourselves. So you are coming down to the Social Change Project this week, and already I trust you've been looking at the two main PowerPoints, the one of them on cultural change and the other one on consumerism. They really both have a significant role to play in the way our neighborhoods and our lives change. So I want you to consider them uh, in your response. I'll just highlight a few things. The culture change chart you will have seen has a number of terms attached to it, but the way I've aligned the chart is from top to bottom, from the point of culture shock at the beginning when one just arrives at a country in enculturation to the bottom when one becomes the assimilator of somebody else. So what the chart does is it sort of gives an overview of someone who's an immigrant and how they have to move through various elements of change in order to fit into a culture. In some cases, they refuse to change and they become ethnocentric. That means their ethnicity becomes central to who they are, and that's who they hang out with, and that's who they associate with. Sadly, for some, this moves to the next phase, which is racism. Now, I'm defining racism very narrowly in this unit. Racism is kind of being tossed around just as an agitated political term these days. But in its pure form here, it means someone has made a biological pre-assessment or prejudicum, as the Latin goes, about someone else's biology and thus makes judgments. An ethnocentric person is one who hangs out with their own people group and their own food ways, own religion, and so on. So those who refuse to change move off to that side. The more you assimilate, others become bicultural and bilingual. That means they carry two sides to them. In some ways, I'm quite bicultural. I really think I'm more transnational, having my Swedishness and Estonian side still buried in who I am, but raised in the very, very Asian West Coast, now living in New York City. So I'm kind of this globalist, I suppose, maybe confused about my own culture, but some become bicultural, dual language. Social drift moves off the angle. This is the person who does not want to be a conformist and wants to fit in with a separate kind. So we see in the cultural change chart how culture changes and shifts based on the immigrant. Then you are going to see the urban ecology, which is a series of maps where the excuse me, a series of maps where the different colors represent different ethnic groups moving in and out of a neighborhood, and that's what we mean by Generation A, Generation B, Generation C, and so on and so forth. What you'll notice is the colors change, and what the urban ecology by Park and Burgess in the Chicago School in the early 1900s argued is there is a permanence to a urban structure. So streets remain the same, buildings remain the same, parks remain the same, but the people change consistently. So there are seasons of cultures in neighborhoods. You'll see this in your own neighborhood research of where you'll have seen different variations of it over time. And indeed, if you use archival research and look at old photographs and historical records, you can see this shift from one to the other. Now, that being said, of course, some buildings get torn down and other ones come up to replace it. But the basic idea of the Chicago School is that there's a seasonal change in culture with neighborhoods. Thirdly, really important, is Merton's strain theory. Now, it's complex to understand in its full force, but it's been the standard in the study of deviance, of what is social deviance. What he has is 4 quadrants based on an axis of conventional means and cultural adaptation. So on the top, when we mean by conventional means, the arrow moves in this direction, and then by culture means this way. So someone who is at the top quadrant is a conformist, and a conformist is someone who believes in popular culture, the conventional wisdom of the day, and that culture does change and shift. So they move with the times. Politicians like to be conformists because that gets the most type of votes. And the argument has been made that police officers, what they really do when they manage a neighborhood is conformity to the rules created by the majority. Really a utilitarian philosophical idea that the majority is the greater good, whether it hurts somebody else or not. Moving away from conventional means, but also believing in cultural change, are the innovators in this quadrant. The innovators are those who say culture changes and I'm going to be the one that changes it. This is those who are Florida calls them the creative class. Some of us suggest they're called bohemians, but really they're ones that move away. Hipsterishness to some degree, but hipsters are just as much pop culture these days as moving away. But someone who is an innovator believes in not being conventional and believes that culture is changing, so they pull a strain from the conformist to be innovation. The third moves this way, does not believe in cultural change and that everybody should be the same. So conventional at the bottom of this quadrant is the ritualist. The ritualist is one who says things are meant to be this way and they should not change. I like to picture this with the Amish of southeastern Pennsylvania, or the Hasidic Jews, for instance, in New York City, that they have been acting and living and believing the same way for hundreds of years. They don't believe that there needs to be cultural change, and they don't believe that cultural change is a good thing, that it's a bad thing. And conventional means, being in here, means that everybody should be the same. So these become very cloistered communities that are very ritualistic about their life and live their life just that way. It's very fascinating in New York City to watch this with the Hasidic community in Williamsburg that live still with the Sabbath in effect on Saturdays. That means all the stores are closed, everything is shut down, and everybody walks the maximum 8 blocks to synagogue. Friday will be very busy as people are getting ready for Sabbath. So that's the ritualist. Then at this quadrant, we're moving away from conventional wisdom, so we're not conventional, and in this way, we are all the same, or we believe in no change. So this is the retreater who believes things are not right, and we live by our own set of rules. The retreaters pull away. And the greatest strain, Merton says, is between the conformist and the retreater. That's the strain, the tension, as they pull for power. This is why in a neighborhood, gang members who retreat into their own subculture and believe their rules matter most don't care about what the conformists, the police on this side are, so they'll be in a natural tension. There's a tension the other way as well, from the pure innovator to the ritualist. So for instance, one of my students wrote a paper on the Hasidics and the hipsters of Williamsburg. The hipsters wanted to have a bike lane that went directly through the Sabbath neighborhood on a Saturday. Of course, the Hasidics were very much opposed to this and didn't believe the bike lane should go through their neighborhood because it was their ritual to close it on Sabbath. And they became quite offended when people would ride through their neighborhood, particularly young women clad in tiny shorts, riding through their neighborhood on a Sabbath. Went to city council, and the bike route was routed around the Hasidic neighborhood and onto the Williamsburg Bridge. So we have this tension and strain between that. So Merton's strain theory has these quadrants, and as you look at the chart, you'll find yourself somewhere situated in it. And as you read a neighborhood, you can find conformists, innovators, ritualists, and retreaters. I'm not dealing with the new means because that's revolution, and we're not in a true revolution in the United States, so some think we are. That means you don't believe in anything, you're going to throw everything out. Well, let's move on. The other video is consumerism. Now, there are a few important theories here that forces change and innovation. Planned obsolescence is the concept that we plan to make things obsolete. So for instance, this phone that I'm filming on right now, I would guess in a year or two will be obsolete. It won't be useful for this anymore because they need to sell a new phone. Planned obsolescence is the idea that we make things in order for them to break down, in order for you to buy a new one. Or we make something new in order to out the old one, whether we need the old one or not. This is the idea of new fashions, new car models, new phones, and so on and so forth. So planned obsolescence affects our consumer society and who is seen as innovators versus those who are conformists. So the innovators and technology people are often celebrated because they represent this new edge. Funny how COVID-19 has forced everything back inside, and people are now seeing some of the old school ideas. Well, I actually have to talk at a meal with my parents. I have to sit in a house with my husband. I can't go out. We're stuck here, which actually might be a useful thing. But that's a different topic for a different day. But it does relate to this idea of planned obsolescence, of what's being made obsolete that actually is valid compared to what is the innovation that is replacing it. Another term is Marcuse's idea of the corruption of need. We have basic needs: water, food, shelter, sleep, relationships, protection, and procreation. Shelter and protection are kind of similar, but those are basic needs, and every tribal society throughout history has in some way or another worked towards these. Indeed, the innovators, what they'll do is they'll take these basic needs and now enhance it to try and sell us something more, better food. We have the bottled water now. We have to have better relationships. So we have new dating sites. We have to sleep in better hotels and nicer beds, nicer mattresses. You get the idea. So we have this concept of what we need versus what we want. What Marcuse argues is important for us to think about is he argues that need has been corrupted by desire, so we don't really know what we need. So in a neighborhood that's changing, in a social world that's changing, we don't really know what we need. We know what we want, and what we want replaces what we need. I find this funny when I think about it. In getting Christmas presents when you're a little kid, you say, I need that little car, I need that, I'm gonna cry because we don't really need it, but you think you need it and you believe you need it. And so the good parent, will get it for you, but say, this is not really what you need. And we can become that way. Meanwhile, we want a new outfit, a new car. We need that thing. So Marcuse really confronts this human idea in the consumer society that we move towards corruption of need. In the video, you'll see other terms of how this is done, the corruption of entertainment, the society of the spectacle, and so on and so forth. But these really are the key ideas. So now, when you're going to do your social change assessment, I want you to think about this, about culture change, about the strain theory, about urban ecology and the shifting of neighborhoods and seasons of neighborhoods, about planned obsolescence, and about the corruption of need, and much more in there. I hope this helps you to get to some idea of what are some of the social changes in your neighborhood. See you next time.